everyone. I want to welcome all of you to our first online version of our Active Bystander Intervention Training. So this is brought to you from SBI Health Education Office at the University of Buffalo. I am Erin Millette and I am the Master's in Social Work intern here at SBI Health Education. SBI is a student-run organization that provides programs here on campus to fit all students' needs. We have several different departments, but health education specifically works on promoting actions against sexual assaults and things like that on campus. So this is one program we have that is concentrating on having people notice events and how to properly intervene in them. So what we are using is the No Woman Left Behind program, which is a national movement from the One Student organization. So first I want to introduce you to No Woman Left Behind. This is a bystander intervention program created by women, for women, and the men who care about them. This program was established to educate communities and create a culture that does not wait for others to step in. This program is putting it on us as individuals to help create social change. This is also a one-student program, as I previously mentioned, which is a national campaign to address sexual violence on campus through public awareness and education initiatives. And this is just one program that they have that is doing this. It is also important for you to know that UB is the first and only chapter in New York State that has the No Woman Left Behind movement. Now I want to show you the One Student video to give you more of a background on One Student itself and to show you how this was created and why we're all here.
I am one student.
I am one student.
Yo soy un estudiante.
Ik ben een student.
I'm running down and past the yellow house with Joe into the breeze when no one seems.
I am a survivor.
I am a survivor.
I am a friend of a survivor.
One sexual assault is too many.
One student can make a difference.
And I'm feeling so small.
I can be the one.
I can be the one.
For them, I'll be the one. Will you be the one?
Open light, and every time we work ourselves up to rage.
I will work with onestudent.org to help end sexual violence.
I will make sexual choices that I'm comfortable with.
What will you do?
I am one student.
I am one student.
Mitad un estudiante.
I am a sister.
I am a brother.
I am a survivor.
I will create a campus that will support survivors.
Against the big sky tonight.
I will help my friends understand that regardless of what someone wears, how much they drink, or how much they flirt, they do not deserve to be sexually assaulted.
What will you do?
I am a catalyst for change.
I am one student.
I am a sorority woman.
I'm an artist.
I am a teacher. I will teach my students to respect one another.
I will use respectful language.
I will respect my partner.
What will you do?
I am an empowered survivor.
I am a daughter.
I am an athlete.
I am an honor student.
I am a survivor.
I am a university administrator.
I am a soccer player.
I am a sister.
I am a lover of languages.
I am an incest survivor. I will break the silence.
What will you do?
What will you do?
What will you do?
I will educate my friends and family and make sure that they know that it's never a survivor's fault. I will believe someone when they tell me they were sexually assaulted.
I will make sexual choices that I am comfortable with.
I will volunteer for one student to make a difference.
I'll be the one to change my generation.
What will you do?
One sexual assault is too many. One student can make a difference.
Will you be the one?
I can be the one.
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 Against that big moon sky tonight.
onestudent.org.
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 Will you be the one? Please visit onestudent.org.
So let's look at why we are all here. Why did you choose to watch this training? Maybe you want to be able to evaluate ambiguous situations. Maybe you want to recognize the barriers in intervening so you know how to step in. So knowing yourself and your own personal barriers that you have, and knowing to look past those and trying to help someone anyways. Most important, you may just want to be able to help others. SBI concentrates on drinking and alcohol, altercations on campus, and sexual assault, but the training you will receive here is good for any instance whatsoever. We are concentrating on just getting students to understand various situations and to give them the tools and the confidence to assess these situations and how to intervene appropriately. So what does bystander intervention look like? We're going to show you a brief video now of the history of how No Woman Left Behind got started.
It started out here as just another Saturday night party thrown by college athletes.
It was a typical baseball party with a lot of alcohol, a lot of people.
But by night's end, it would become anything but typical.
The thought of what those boys did to her in that room was just overwhelming.
Overwhelming because these three college soccer players say they were eyewitnesses to a gang rape.
This event will be stuck with me to my grave.
It's a scene that still haunts Lauren Chief Elk, called Chief, April Growley, and Lauren Bryant, who, like the baseball players, were student athletes at De Anza Community College in Cupertino, California, in the heart of the Silicon Valley. The young women met and bonded on the soccer field.
The three of us have played soccer since we started walking. We just became close really fast.
With a passion for sports, the three say they loved watching the baseball team practice just a field away.
Yeah, you cheered that whole team on.
There weren't many cheers for the De Anza Dons on March 3, 2007. The team had lost to their crosstown rivals, but they'd celebrate anyway. It was the 20th birthday of teammate Spencer Maltby, seen here on MySpace. Tell me how you learned about this party.
I received a phone call from one of the guys that was throwing the party at the house.
Neighbors say this small San Jose home where infielder Stephen Rabagliati lived had a big reputation for parties and drinking.
It was the first thing we saw when we walked in.
It was just, take a shot, let's go take a shot. I want you to take a shot, here's this, here's that.
Encouraging you to get drunk. And there was a binge drinking game they called Slapping the Bladder, which party host Rabagliati once demonstrated on Facebook.
They had wine coolers, these bags of wine, hanging on the walls, and they would take one down and slap it and then put it in someone's mouth, and that person would have to chug the thing.
Pitcher Chris Knopf enjoyed it enough to once post online, "Bladder slapping has opened my eyes to a whole new level of binge drinking." And alcohol wasn't all that was available at the crowded house party, according to Chief.
I just heard, "Who wants to fizz?" Like they made an announcement about it, and I was like, wow, because I knew that fizz is slang for ecstasy.
Called the love drug, ecstasy, among other things, is known to stimulate sexual desire. Did any of you do any of the drugs besides drinking?
God, no.
No.
Did any of you drink?
I had a few drinks right when I got there. I wasn't continually drinking. It was just basically from like a half an hour span, and then I stopped.
I didn't drink anything.
You, Lauren?
I just had a beer.
They soon saw a petite young blonde girl hanging out in the kitchen.
And we just noticed her because she had a cute necklace on, so we, just complimented her, and that was it.
Later, around 11:30 that night, they noticed that her behavior was completely different.
I did see that she was intoxicated. There was some dancing going on, like a sexual act.
With guys?
With an individual.
That was pitcher Chris Skinner, and the girl was giving him a kind of lap dance.
The person that she was dancing with is kind of one of those players that is not nerdy, but it was just like, wow, this guy's getting, dancing with the girl. So they kind of made it a big deal. And I only watched for a few seconds because it really, to me, wasn't that big of a deal.
Shortly after, the girls were ready to leave. What led you to think something was going on somewhere?
There was a young girl knocking on these French doors covered by a black sheet saying there was a girl in there with 8 guys. That struck us as kind of odd. Yeah. And so we took it amongst ourselves to see what was going on.
They tried opening the glass doors.
A baseball player from De Anza opened up the door and we're like, oh, you know, what's going on? Is there really a girl in there with 8 guys? And he said, she wants to be in here and she wants this, and slams the door in our face.
This baseball player said that this girl wants to be in here.
That she wants to be in here, and it's none of our effing business. Just the way that he talked to us really got us angry.
It was pitcher Scott Rigetti, they say, a familiar face on campus. Now, what do you think is happening at this point?
We really have no idea, but we just have a bad feeling. He's getting mad that we keep trying to interrupt and everything.
After several more failed attempts, Chief says she suddenly noticed a small corner opening at the bottom of the door.
And I walked over and bent down, and when I looked in, what I saw was a girl lying on top of the mattress and a guy on top of her. And
having sex with her?
He was having sex with her, and there were about 10 pairs of legs. They were surrounding the bed right next to each other.
Watching. It was the same blonde girl they'd seen in the kitchen, the same girl April had watched dancing so provocatively.
And I just immediately knew that this guy is raping her. And I just stood up and just grabbed Lauren and said, look what's going on in here.
One at a time, Lauren and April crouched down and peered inside.
I saw a guy on top of her, thrusting his hips.
Clearly having sex with her.
Yes.
Did you get a good look at this guy's face?
I couldn't see him because his face was away from me. I could just see the back of his head. At that point, I saw another guy come up to her, and he was forcing oral copulation on her.
So 2 guys
Yes.
were having sex with her at the same time. Was she in any way participating?
No.
Aware of what she was doing?
She wasn't moving at all. Her eyes weren't open. I couldn't see her eyes.
She was bare from the waist down and not moving.
I just said, oh, hell no. We gotta stop this.
And like commandos prepping for a raid, the women were overcome by adrenaline, focused on getting the girl to a hospital.
A door couldn't stop us. Boys couldn't stop us. I mean, it was just fight or flight, and we were gonna get her out of there.
We grabbed the handle, and the 3 of us throw our bodies and push against the door. And we start yelling and swearing, and the door pops open.
As the guys casually left the room, she says, they raced to the helpless girl.
She had her pants clearly ripped off of her.
Ripped off, not just taken off?
No, they were not taken off. And her body was very graphic. It was clearly not consensual.
No girl would ever consent to how we found her.
Her panties were wrapped around one ankle, and it was just like, it was disgusting. It was very demeaning and very degrading.
Were you just worried about her sobriety, or were you also worried about an assault that had happened?
We were worried about both.
We already knew that a sexual assault happened on her. We just wanted her to be able to live through it.
19-year-old April Growley, studying to be a nurse, feared the worst.
I've seen how people act with alcohol poisoning, and the way she was acting was like that, but times 10.
Convinced that the half-naked girl was in danger, they jumped into action.
When we first found her, she was unconscious.
She had vomit streaming from the side of her face.
Both of them scooped vomit out of her mouth. And that's when she was able to finally say, I'm sorry.
What does she mean, I'm sorry?
We had no idea.
Investigators would later reveal that the vomit found on the teen was not her own. But before that and other appalling details would come to light, her young rescuers struggled to get her to an emergency room.
We literally had to lift her and carry her out.
Her feet were dragging on the floor. It was dead weight.
Then, Chief says, pitcher Scott Rigetti added this remark.
The guy who was holding the door back from us said, "This bitch got drunk and did it to herself."
Sometime after 1 a.m., they would make it to the nearest hospital where authorities were called. Laurie Smith, the tough, outspoken sheriff of Santa Clara County, would head the case.
We did hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of investigation in actually a very short period of time. We talked to as many of the people that were present at the party as we could.
How challenging was this in the beginning to try to unravel?
Well, I think the real challenging part was the fact that the victim had no memory of it.
No memory, Sheriff Smith suspects, because of the girls' heavy drinking that night.
The young women who went in and I keep saying rescued the victim out of the room, they had a lot of memory about what happened, but they only saw a short period of time of the incident.
And for Sheriff Smith, that would make for a difficult investigation. She believed that rape was likely, but proving it was another matter.
The young men that were in the room virtually didn't tell us anything.
The ball players who admitted to their coach that they were in the room were immediately suspended from the team for violating the school's code of conduct. Among them was Stephen Ribagliati, who threw the party, and pitcher Scott Righetti, nephew of former Major Leaguer Dave Righetti.
The investigation was frustrating to me. I think there probably was a code of silence. They hung together. They didn't provide us with the information that we needed.
So there was no clear-cut story on what happened to the 17-year-old girl, other than her serious intoxication.
Well, she had to have been drinking a lot because we estimate her blood alcohol level at the time of the rape to be a 0.32. That's nearly a lethal level.
Wow. Alcohol poisoning.
Alcohol poisoning, death. One of the young women, and I think it was April, put their fingers down the victim's throat and got her to vomit. Who knows what her blood alcohol level would have been had April not had the sense to know that she was in risk.
How much did she have to drink to get to that level?
Well, she had to have 15 to 17 drinks, a lot of drinks, short period of time.
Is it possible that she could have consented to sex with the blood alcohol level that high?
Can you really consent if you're 17 years old and if your blood alcohol level is a 0.32? I don't think so. That's why I believe that a crime occurred.
The case soon sparked local outrage, branding the young men pariahs within their own community. At the center of the investigation, this girl, a high school softball player who's never spoken publicly nor been identified. Months after that terrible night, she agreed to meet with 2020 producers, later inviting us to one of her games. Emerging from a haze of depression and anxiety, she told us she had no memory of what she feels certain was a rape. She does recall drinking several shots, including one she says was poured from a different bottle. And she remembers sharing a drink with a ball player. The rest is a blur. For days after the ordeal, she would sit alone in a darkened apartment, afraid to leave. Katie Crum was the girl's former English teacher.
She really wanted to have a better life, and she knew college was her ticket, so she really wanted to get a softball scholarship to ensure that she would get there.
Crum remembers a shy teenager who was determined to improve her grades.
I would never describe her as a wild child or a wild kid or any kind of student that would get in trouble ever.
Investigators thought they had a strong case of rape. An intoxicated teen under the age of consent, college athletes in a frat boy atmosphere, and 3 solid eyewitnesses. It was now all in the hands of prosecutors. Then, 2 months later, a bombshell. Dolores Carr, Santa Clara's district attorney, decides not to file any charges.
The way the case stands now, it's impossible to file charges and hope to get a conviction in this case.
It felt like my heart had been ripped out, and all we could do was just cry, and we cried so hard that we couldn't even breathe. There were 3 people who watched something happen, and like, if that's not enough, then, you know, why is rape even a crime?
I can't tell you how many cases I've prosecuted where people try to blame victims for all sorts of crimes.
It's an age-old argument, says former prosecutor Jim Hammer, who counseled the 3 soccer players.
I would stand in front of any jury anywhere in this country and say, do you think a girl with vomit on her face who's on the verge of death, in the opinion of the three girls, is able to consent. That's not sex, that's rape.
The alleged rape victim insists she never consented to sex with anyone. Sources close to the investigation tell 2020 that most eyewitnesses confirm that at some point in the evening, the girl entered the room voluntarily with Chris Skinner, the ball player she danced so provocatively for. And the vomit later found on her would turn out to be Skinner's. Once in the room, he became sick before passing out. What happened next is hotly disputed. So last year, Attorney General Brown, like the DA, decided not to file charges either, citing insufficient evidence for prosecution, questionable accounts from partygoers due to an extreme level of alcohol consumption, and in general, wildly conflicting accounts.
As awful as this is, did this young woman put herself in a dangerous position by drinking so heavily that night?
Oh, that's a terrible question to ask, because it's never the victim's fault.
The message seems to be, if you can get a young girl drunk enough and in a private space, surrounded by your friends, you can rape her, you can do just about whatever you want, and you can get away with it. That's a chilling message.
And you think that's the message coming out of this case?
They walked.
Believing she was robbed of a day in criminal court, the alleged victim has now filed a civil suit against 9 of the De Anza ball players, accusing them, among other things, of rape and/or failure to stop an assault.
The real hero is this girl who basically, yeah, she may be going through being dragged through the mud. You know, people may be saying her demeanor was really awful, but she's still standing there saying, I was raped.
What a powerful video. This is only one example of why bystander intervention makes a difference. This video emphasizes preventing sexual assault on campuses, and it's important to know the statistics when you're thinking about this. Please know that 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted in their college career, and 1 in 33 men will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. But you can use this for all instances, not just sexual assault. So let's define some definitions here so that we know really what we're talking about. So what is a bystander? A bystander is someone who is present at an event. They are an onlooker, or they can be a chance spectator. This can be anyone. We have all been them at some point in time. Now that we know what a bystander is, what is the bystander effect? The bystander effect, or shared responsibility, is the phenomenon in which someone is less likely to intervene because there are other people around them. An example of this is 1964, Kitty Genovese was murdered in her neighborhood. Her neighbors were there and watched it happen, and no one did anything about it. One phone call could have saved her life. Now, all situations that this training can be used in don't have to be that severe, but it is important to know that you acting in this situation can make a difference. Now let's look at an active bystander. This is someone who is also present at an event, but they realize the problem and take action to resolve it. And this is why all of us are here. We're going to give you the tools in order to do this. Now that we have defined a bystander and an active bystander, what are the barriers that prevent someone from becoming an active bystander and remaining as just a bystander in a situation? Some people may be fearful of peer pressure or embarrassed of acting if no one else is. One thought is that no one else is, why should I? This goes back to the shared responsibility and the bystander effect. Some people just don't know how to help. And this is what this training is for. We are giving you the skills, knowledge, and confidence in order to actively intervene in a situation so that this is no longer a barrier for you. Some people are just afraid of being unhelpful. They may think they may do more damage or that they make the situation worse. Some people are just unsure whether it's a problem. They don't know this person. They don't know what's actually happening, so they don't want to interrupt something and make it bigger than what it is. Some people don't want to involve themselves in other people's business. It's not their problem, and that's how they see it. And lastly, they assume someone else will, which does go back to the bystander effect, just assuming that someone else will take care of it so you don't have to. So what can you do? Here are 5 steps to the bystander intervention so that you will know how to help from now on. First and foremost, you need to notice the event. You can do this by being aware of both your surroundings and everyone around you. Being aware allows you to notice the issue when it arises. Second, you need to interpret this event that you have noticed. Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? You can do this when you look for warning signs and red flags. Also, be aware of your own instincts if you sense danger or discomfort. If your gut tells you there is a problem, then there probably is one, and you should listen to it. Angela Rose, who is the director of PAVE, spoke at our Take Back the Night here on campus and mentioned that before she was kidnapped, she had an awful feeling in her gut telling her to run from this man who was following her, and she didn't run. She ended up being kidnapped, and she always wished that she would have listened to her gut. Sometimes you have these unexplained feelings, and you need to be able to trust them. Third, you need to assume personal responsibility. This again comes back to the bystander effect. Everyone is responsible in preventing violence. No one else is going to step in. You need to be the one to do it. Be that leader of the group. Show everyone that there is a problem and stop helping them have that blind eye and lead the group into making this change. This is also how you create social change. If this was you, would you want someone to help? Would you want someone to step in? Also, you may feel guilty later if you don't act. Fourth, we need to know how to intervene. So we have noticed the problem, we have interpreted it as a problem. It is now our responsibility to act. How are we going to do that? So we need to make a plan before we just react. There are 2 ways to do this. First, you can directly intervene, where you are the primary helper. You have chosen to actively step in. Sometimes this is easier, though, if you know the person who is directly involved. Other examples of this are you just asking what's going on, talking to the people who are having the issue. You can also indirectly intervene. You can request that someone else take this primary role, such as an RA, the host of a party, a friend of either the victim or the perpetrator, or you can create a group to help you. You can call the police, or you can make a scene or a distraction that breaks up the situation. It is not the skills that you have, but the confidence in knowing that you are doing the right thing. This is the best way for you to help, is just to know someone needs it. The 5th step is actually implementing this help. Just like the girls we saw here in our video, which was the 2nd video we watched, where they stepped in and took action, this is what we need to personally do as well. They took on that personal responsibility, and so do we. After assessing the situation, you need to implement the help as safe as you can. When you are implementing your intervention, you want to make sure you are following the C model. First and foremost, your intervention should be safe. You can't help if you get hurt. And remember, the goal is to keep the victim and yourself safe. You want to intervene early. You want to intervene before this problem becomes a crisis. For example, if there was someone at a party on campus and someone was acting aggressive towards someone, you don't want to react after they've already started fighting. You want to react when you have a chance to de-escalate the person. Lastly, you want to intervene effectively. This is where you are actually helping and keeping everyone safe. You want to assess the situation and have a plan. Don't just react or do something. You need to think about it specifically in order to act actually effectively and safely. The ultimate goal is safety. So please remember that safety is key. Now that we have went over our 5 steps and we have trained everyone on how to be an active bystander, let's discuss some resources we have both in our area here and on campus so that you can refer people to those after the event has occurred if necessary. Some resources are crisis services, university police, Amherst and Buffalo police, depending on which campus you are in, UB Counseling Services, SBI Health Education, which is us, Judicial Affairs. This can come in handy if there's legal implications that just need addressing, Wellness, and the Title IX office. Please also remember our Good Samaritan policy here on campus. If something is going on, someone is drunk and really intoxicated where they need to go to the hospital, or someone got really severely hurt and the police needs to be there to help them, please remember that if you have done something wrong, we still want you to call and help that person. And because you decided to call and help someone, UBPD will be a lot more lenient on you. Okay, so now that we talked about everything, let's review to make sure we all know. So, what are the 5 steps? Can you name them? First, we want to notice the event. Then we need to interpret the event as a problem. After we have saw the event and noticed that it is a problem, we know now to take personal responsibility and that no one else will. We also need to know how to help. We can't just react. We need to analyze the situation. And once we do that, we can implement our help. So does everyone remember what the C model is? The C model is intervening safe, early, and effectively. And what is a bystander as we have defined it? We define a bystander as someone who is present at the event, is an onlooker, and a chance spectator. So what is the bystander effect or shared responsibility? This is when other people are around, people are less likely to act in a situation and help someone. Lastly, what is an active bystander? It is someone who takes action in order to protect others. It is someone who has followed the 5 steps and is using the C model of acting safe, early, and effectively. And hopefully, now that we have all had this training, we will now all be active bystanders and not just a bystander anymore. Thanks to everyone for watching this training, and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact our office. Thank you.